Hi, everybody.
Hi. Right.
That's beautiful. Okay. All right. So if you guys have not met this beautiful young lady here, she is a member and she is also working with me one-on-one as she grows out her e-commerce product line. So Michelle, welcome to the Lashpreneur Society and sharing all your knowledge on premades. Why don't you give everybody just kind of a heads up on who you are, who you serve, why you're doing this crazy thing of focusing in and specializing in premades.
Yes, my name is Michelle, and I'm the owner of Imperfection is Beauty. I've been lashing 4 years now and been using premades for about 3.5. I learned about premades in the very beginning. Volume was not the easiest thing for me at all. I had a lot of retention issues until I finally switched to premades, and I was like, everything just clicked for me. I had better retention. My clients loved them. They liked that they got great retention, as well as they weren't laying down for 3 to 4 hours for a full set. So I decided that I wanted to create my own pre-made line and also come with some education behind the pre-mades and truly just help people that have issues that take a little bit longer doing volume lashes, or somebody that has some body, things, some aches and pains. Pre-made really help cut down the time when you're doing your volume lashes.
Oh, love it. Yeah, so really the goal of today is we started this conversation in the group thanks to Danielle Fabrizio, I think.
Yes,
maybe it was Erica, was talking about premades and kind of people's input. Now, I love a good controversy, right? And I will be the first to admit, when I became a lash educator, I was a lash educator for My Brand Lashes prior to going full-time into the Lashpreneur. And I remember Hillary Brand of My Brand Lashes saying, I think we're going to bring on a line of premades. And I was like, that is the dumbest shit you could possibly do. Pardon my language, children, earmuffs. Because as a new educator, I was like, why would somebody pay to get education to do the service that you are now saying you don't need to do the service? You can just do this tray and off you go. And so I was a little miffed, and my ego was a little bruised of like, why did I just become an educator for this company when they're just gonna like circumvent my training? Now that I'm no longer an educator for extensions, I now see both sides, right? And I see the artistry side of it, where you're hand making, or what we'll reference to as pro-made fans, where the artist is making the fans, versus pre-mades where it's already done. Now, Michelle, can you tell me the difference between various types of pre-mades? Because I know there's ones where they already have a little bit of glue, so it's really just like applying classic, versus those that don't have the glue that you then have to dip in the glue and then put on. And just like, what are the different options for pre-mades out there, like aside from what you offer?
Oh, geez. So there's loose pre-mades that are not on the strip that you have to take out and like finagle and do these weird things. And I guess put them on like a silicone strip is what people have told me that they do. And that's just too much for me. That's like too much.
That sounds like, were you around for pot lashes? Was anybody
Exactly what it's like.
So if you guys are, if you haven't been in the industry for like 9 or 10 years, there used to be pot lashes, and it was just a little bit of a plastic container with a lid. And quite honestly, it looked like a bunch of pubes in a bowl, and you had to take one out and put it on a silicone pad to get the static to get it to stand up so that you could then pick it up. And it was before they had strips on trays. Like this is dating myself, but yeah. Okay. Sounds like that. Awesome.
Yes. As well as I've seen ones, that don't really have any adhesive at all. It's just like the little fibers, and they're just barely held on the strip. And when you pick them up, if you pick them up incorrectly, they just like fray apart. They just completely, it's like, oh, okay, I should have handmade that fan myself, and I could have dipped it and pro-made it.
Right. And then it's waste because you can't use that, because how are you going to get it set back up again? Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
And then there's the standard ones where they're already created, but they don't have the adhesive at the bottom, but you do have to, they're on there pretty good that you can get a grip to them and then lift them out. And then there's ones that have a little bit of adhesive on them that you could lift off one extension, the whole thing would come off, right?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. So I guess where the kind of speak to those that are concerned with pre-mades not being real volume, the belief around that.
I don't know who even really, came up with saying that premades are not real volume. I always reference it. Same thing was with the nail artist. It's tips versus forms. I don't know why people think that we're not real artists when it doesn't matter what we're using as long as it's safe and correct and we're applications right. What it is really, I mean, the artistry really comes from the shaping, the sizing, the application. Are your clients happy? It's really the lash artist, and I feel like the industry that likes to bash on that, because a lot of volume trainers are going to lose money is what it comes down to. And not, I mean, I know volume. I learned, I took mini volume classes. I just took a Russian volume. I took Mavens because I wanted to know so I could train my students as well. But I'm a solo pre-made artist. That's all I do. But I'm still an artist. It doesn't matter if you only do pre-mades or you only do handmade. It's really, you're an artist, whatever you do.
Yeah. And I think in some ways it's, you made a good point of really look at the source of who is saying that. If you want to use it, if you don't want to use premades, by all means, don't use premades. We're not saying like this is the gold standard, and we'll get to the business side of it, and where there really is a lot of benefit and value to considering adding premades to your offerings. But consider the source of who's telling you this information. Chances are those that are saying that premades are not, means that you're not a real artist or whatever, is coming from somebody who has money to make off of you taking their training course. And there is a lot of customization and benefits to learning how to do volume fans yourself. Mm-hmm. The primary reason that even Michelle and I are working together and to really help from a business perspective for the end user like you guys is the time that it takes not only to get decent at volume where you can start charging for it and get your clients a consistent result, but also the time it takes for application. You run into some real issues with building a clientele of volume with how long it takes to get to proficiency with the creation of the fans and the application. It is a real issue that clients don't want to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours laying down. That also for the time that it takes for you to apply and your own body, as well as what you can charge and have that broken down by hour, we're getting to a point where at some point we max out on the money we're making per hour and we either taper out or we decline. So if I can only charge even $200 for a full volume set and it takes me 4 hours. Now, if it's taking you 4 hours for a full volume set, you're probably not at a proficient place quite yet, but that's working out to be about what, $50 an hour. It's, while it sounds good, you could be making more money by saving time by utilizing something like premades, even though the product cost is significantly higher. So Michelle, kind of talk to the objection that people have that premades are so much more expensive than volume trays.
Yes. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, they're too expensive. Well, they are a little more expensive, but you have to think about the time that you are saving. You are saving time, hours. You could save up to 2 to 3, 4 hours a day, and that could equal up to another client. So like Tara said, if you're charging $200 a full set and it takes you 4 hours to do a handmade full set and you do premades in 2 hours, that's an extra whole $200 that you make. Or if you're getting, a couple more fills for your clients. So they are a little bit more, but you are saving more time to where it turns out you can take more clients.
Yeah, the product cost difference is nominal in comparison to your time. Your time will always be more valuable than your product cost. So even if you did the numbers, and I think I shared this post in the group, and if you have a post like it where it breaks down pre-made versus pro-made cost analysis, we can share that in the group or in the comments later as well. But your time should always be far more worth than your product supply costs. Because even at $30 or $40 for a tray of pre-mades, as opposed to call it $16 to $20, actually probably $20 for a single length, loose volume lashes, the time that it takes for you to create the fans, we're outsourcing that to the manufacturer. So we're saving time. So even if it's costing you $5 to $10 more per client in product cost, what you're able to save in time should be $50, $60, $70, $80. So again, cost versus benefit. The pre-mades are getting you time back. And for most of you, that's like the most valuable thing. We don't get any time back in our life. So the more time you can save, you can either work less and make the same amount, or you can work the same and make more when you're switching out for utilizing something like pre-mades, even though they're more expensive, right? It's backwards logic. You would think, oh, why would I pay more for a product when I'm getting the same result? But it's the time factor that's the difference maker.
And I never realized that until, well, I've been listening to the podcast forever, but like, it didn't click for me until I was like, damn, like I just did a full set of handmade volumes lashes. And like I said, my retention was horrible with handmade. And then my clients are like, 2 days later, my lashes are falling off. That was 4 hours of my freaking time that I spent. And now I'm like, shit, now I have to like fill them back up because that was my fault. I didn't know what was going on with my adhesive and, my wrapping techniques and all these different things that really do add up to it, but I can't get that time back. So time is seriously like, yes, you do pay more money for the product, but you are getting more time.
Yeah. And you're getting a similar result. So it's if not even a better result, because there will be less symmetry in a pro-made versus a pre-made, because the pre-made are manufactured to be evenly spaced. So one thing to talk about, and what I want to bring up about your product line specifically, is your Perfect Wrap technology. Full disclosure, we just came up with that about 15 minutes ago. That's part of the work, is that we come up with her exclusive technology that makes her pre-mades different than any other pre-mades out on the market. So can you speak to why you get such better retention with your pre-mades, and even what commonly people struggle with retention for their pre-mades? Because I know some of the complaints are that pre-mades don't last as long as your pro-made volume fans.
So with pre-mades, they don't naturally wrap. So if you are not using a good quality pre-made, it is not going to be able to go all the way around the natural lash. So when you're dipping into the adhesive, you want to go far enough down into it. And with my pre-mades, has a very narrow base. So with the narrow base, you're going to get more connection. And that is the key when it comes to lashing, is that base connection. If there is no base connection, that thing's going to pop right off, or it's going to often there. And then glue, or, get all that good stuff in there, and it's going to come off. So
the way that she described it to me is that a lot of pre-mades have almost a square or a chunky base.
Yes.
And so when you have your natural lash here and you have a square chunky base, you really only have this one touch point, and all of this is hanging off the natural lash that could get caught in something if they're brushing it or start to lift. You only get that one touch point. Whereas if you have a fan that, like she talked about, has that narrow base, it comes in and wraps around. Now all of a sudden you have 6, 7, 8, 9, how many ever extensions are in the fan as touch points, which creates a stronger bond. They also have the bond between them. So you have the bonds between the extensions themselves and the bonds of the extensions to the natural lash when it wraps. And it can be a difference maker between certain quality of pre-mades versus other quality ones where it's less, it's just chunkier base, or it's a wider base and they don't wrap, or if they're already glued, some pre-mades are already glued so that it's just like applying classic, but it's not getting that wrap.
Exactly. And I mean, my 20D are a little bit more of a chunkier base, so I'm not going to get that wrap with it. But with my 14 and anything that's lower, I'm going to get that wrap because it has a very fine, narrow base. And that's what I always look for in the pre-mades, is really the base is what you want to look for.
Yeah, I agree. You guys are welcome to ask questions. I see you guys responding. That's great. Linda, we do have a recommendation. It's actually her product line. And she's got a special little discount for you guys. I'm just going to pull up some notes that I took real quick. All right. So how did you get into, like, why specialize in premades as opposed to just extensions in general? Why premades?
I loved Mega Volume. I took a Mega Volume pinching course, and that's when everything kind of clicked for me. But I still had bad retention. And it would take me 4 hours to 5 hours, or I would come in 2 hours early and pro make fans. And I have some neck issues as well as my hips hurt. I'm getting older, and it's just not worth the time to me anymore. And I was like, okay, I want to create a pre-made line that I can create Mega Volume look with. And I was like, the pandemic happened and it gave us some time to sit there and think. And I was like, all right, well, let's do this.
Yeah, beautiful. I love an origin story. We did have a question of what makes for a quality pre-made. So one, we talked about a chunky or a square base versus the pointy, narrow base, and to be able to wrap. What are some other things that kind of is a differentiator between quality of a pre-made?
You definitely want to make sure whenever you are trying out a brand, I always recommend trying out mixed trays. Don't go full on and buy single leg trays unless you really truly love the brand. You might lose the curl, when your clients 2 weeks later come back and their lashes are straight. You're like, I put on a DD curl and it's an L curl now. So you definitely want to make sure that the curl lasts, as well as me and Tara were talking about the color of the lashes. So when you go out to the sun, make sure that they're true black, that they don't have a blue to it at all. As well as when your client comes back, is there a little square of a base? Because when it comes to pre-made, sometimes I've had it when I was sampling pre-mades that there was a little square base back on the natural lash, and it's just how the fibers fell out of the fan. So that's not very quality.
Yeah, also the tackiness or what the strip is made out of. So oftentimes, and you'll see this with classic lashes too, or even single volume lashes, is if parts of the strip start to come up, especially when you're dealing with pre-mades and they're not already pre-glued, depending on how much pressure you have to put on the tweezer to get all of them to come up, if it's really tacky and you have to keep this symmetry and you have to hold your tweezer really hard, you may end up kinking the tips of the lashes. Also, if you're bringing up the lash and let's say it comes up easy, but there's like that little sticky, clear kind of glue, that's going to get in the way of your retention. And if you try to get that off, like you're just going to mess up the symmetry and all that. So that is also something to consider, the quality of the tray itself, much less the extensions themselves. Yes, straightening of, so if you guys have never seen videos on how eyelash extensions are made, might be a fun YouTube thing for you to do. But basically what they do is they heat cure them. So they roll them up, their little hairs, they line them all up, they roll them up, they heat cure them. And depending on the manufacturer, depending on the time and depending on the quality of the material will depend on how long that curl lasts. Some other things to consider just in eyelash extensions in general is the texture, like how they feel. Do they feel flexible or are they like plasticky? So those would be some things to consider as far as like the quality of the pre-made and how easy they are to use. If you guys are watching the replay or watching now and you've had bad experiences with pre-mades, I'd love to know what your experience was, because that will kind of help us speak to what might have been the issue. Almost every company, I feel like now has some version of a pre-made. So here's honestly why I think considering Michelle's line is something to consider instead of just adding premades. You're welcome to add premades to your next order with your go-to company. But tell me why you specifically only offer premades and why you're like all in on the premades and education around it. What is it about premades being something a bigger brand just adds to their SKU list versus you being the specialist and exclusively that's all you do is premades?
I eat, sleep, breathe premades. Like seriously, I'm not joking.
But why do they care? Nobody cares about you.
Really, I mean, it was retention. It was the retention for me in the beginning. So I had these issues and I was losing clients and I was making no money. And I was like, what is the issue with me? And I knew that I needed to fix it. So when I found premades and I decided to start my own line, that's when things started really popping off in the industry. and I like to be a rebel. I like to disrupt things. So I was like, I want to create my own pre-made lines, but I also want to come out with education to help people get better retention, actually know how to apply them, because there is a little bit of a learning curve when you're first learning pre-mades. They are going to pop off if you're not using enough adhesive, if you're not applying them correctly. You got to put a little bit of pressure to press the lash into the extension. Nobody was teaching that. There was nothing out there when it came to pre-mades. Like, it was literally trial and error for like 2 years. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to start teaching people on my Instagram. And then more people are like, okay, like, this is good. And I'm like, okay, cool. I think I'm going to come up with like an education around it. And yeah.
So she did that. Another thing to consider too, if you're wanting to get more into pre-mades, and it really can be a great supplemental service. So if you are only certified in classic, or you only know how to do classic, you can start to offer volume services right away with pre-mades. You don't have to take an expensive training or a 4-day training or wait for the next one to come around. You can start right away. If you're building out a team and you're teaching them classic, but you have demand for volume, or you don't want to put them through a course, they can start to offer pre-made volume right away. And again, you can even switch from being pro-made to pre-made, or have that as supplemental if for some reason you're running low on time. I know when I first started doing volume, I had my hybrid service, right? And that was my way to get paid practice to practice volume. Well, at some point I kind of ran out of time. I would do 50% classic, 50% volume, but I didn't want to offer the full volume yet because I was worried about how long it would take. So I could practice the first 10 or 15 minutes of a volume set working on the pro-made version, and then make up the time with the pre-mades to still get the client the result, even though I'm in a learning curve. Client is still happy, I'm still getting practice, and I'm getting paid for a luxury service or a higher end service. So there's a lot of different ways that you can add this. It doesn't have to be exclusive volume, but even mega volume. And that's kind of where you specialize right now, is the mega volume fans. So can you talk about your products and what you offer as far as the different fans?
So I have 0.03s and I have 0.05 weights right now. And I have a 20D 0.03 as well as a 14D 03, and then I have a 10D 05. And I'm bringing on a 12D 03. So okay. I'm working on sampling some 07s, as well as I might be bringing on some lower diameters of our 05s, because I know that a lot of people are like, well, what about the inner corners? You can't put a 20D on the inner corner. You know, you're not supposed to. But with my 14D, the fibers, you can just take a couple off. Like, you know, not every natural lash needs that 14D. Maybe there's a little bit babier one that you want to, you know, apply a lash on. Take some of those fibers out of the fan. That's easy. It's not going to mess with the fan at all.
Yeah, and anytime clients are complaining that they're not full enough, this would be a real quick and easy way to put in like a 9mm, even a 14D, to get them that density, right? Without having to take any extra time. Now, I would charge for a hybrid at that point. I wouldn't charge your classic price, because again, it's a higher level service and a better result than what they were experiencing. So don't rob yourself of the upsell. But if you're putting in, even if it was just 10 fans per eye and a 9mm, that'll get you a heck of a lot more density if you're doing 14Ds. And yet the time is still the same as if you were just applying classic. So you could do classic and then upsell for hybrid and just get the more density, get yourself an increase in sales, because you can charge more for that service and get the client the result they want, which is probably the most important aspect.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Anything else? Any other tips that you want to share as far as pre-mades or education or retention or best practices tips? What you got in your brain?
Yes, I do have a freebie on my website. It's imperfectionisbeautyco.com. It's a retention download that you can get. I go over retention with pre-mades, how to pick them up, the products that I have found that over the years that I get the best retention with. So definitely go check that out, and follow me on Instagram, Imperfection is Beauty Lashes, and feel free to DM me. Like, I like to go on there a lot and just wait for people to talk. I'm like, come on, let's talk pre-mades, let's talk lashes. So
geek out of it. Yep. And then you also have a little bit of a gift for our members.
Yes, I do. I have a discount code for you guys. It is Premade 15, and that's going to get you guys 15% off of the website.
I'm putting this in the chat. Use coupon code Premade 15 for a 15% discount with Michelle. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing. And I know I would love if you guys are like, if you have an opinion one way or the other on this, whether yes, it's great, whether, you know, this is
yes, I want it.
Artist, like, let's hear it, right? Because some things that we want to just be mindful of is what may work for someone is not necessarily going to work for somebody else, and that doesn't make them bad, doesn't make them, as far as you know, they're not an artist. Like, can we get our egos out of the way? Like, we're all women just trying to make it in this world. So if we can do that better, easier, faster by using something that others may have their specific opinions on, to each their own. One question was, do you ship worldwide?
Yes.
Bingo. There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. We'll link up all your stuff again. Imperfection is Beauty is her Instagram handle. You can DM her there if you have questions specifically or struggles that you've had with premades. She is a wealth of knowledge. And then also you can go to imperfectionisbeautyco.com and use the coupon code Premade15 to get 15% off an order with Michelle. So let's go support our sis as she kind of helps you guys make some more money too with implementing premades into your services. Thanks, Michelle. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.